Kerr Cuhulain. He's a retired Canadian Mountie. And he's been able to use his training or his past work experience to restructure and enhance principles, basic principles of ethics and magical intent. So tonight, in this fascinating topic, we're going to be looking at the benefits of polite psychic practice, proper and honorable based fighting form, and self-defense. These tenets are applicable to all areas of life, especially psychics and energy workers, and also for anyone else needing empowering in social or difficult work circumstances. So that's what we're going to be bringing in tonight. We're just waiting for Kerr to connect.
Hello, are you there?
Yes, hi, Kerr. Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you too. Pleased to be here. Thanks for having me.
Fantastic. Oh, well, thank you for coming. So, Kerr, we're really excited about your particular work. Kerr himself, he has written a few bodies of work. Actually, he has written a lot. But one of the things that he has done is he's got a very interesting work history. Kerr, tell us a bit about yourself. You're in BC right now.
Right. I'm in Seashell, BC.
Which is, for
Sunshine
those of you
Coast.
that don't know, it's like the islands north of
Yeah, I'm on the west coast of Canada, so I'm looking down at the ocean through my window right now.
I know, and he really is, because I used to live there and I know what he means. And
Okay.
tell us a bit about yourself, Kerr.
I'm a retired Vancouver police officer, not a Mountie. I was with the municipal police here. 36 years I was involved both as a police officer and a dispatcher. I was the first officer to go public about his Wiccan beliefs, and then spent the next 25 years doing anti-defamation work and talking to police agencies and public agencies all over North America, educating them about things pagan and psychic. And I'm the head of the Order of Skaya, which is a registered religious society in the province of British Columbia. It's an order of knights. And so we're active trying to show people how to empower themselves and how to stand up and by their example show the world how this can be a better place.
Right, and this is what we found fascinating. One of the reasons I found you as well was because you had an interesting list that you had on the Order of Sky, your website, and
Okay.
one of the things that drew me into your work was the organization and the training or the discipline that you seem to even had in the layout of your books and your web design. Now, you, from what I could see here, you had written a book on the Wiccan self-defense, or at least for law enforcement. How was that received in the law enforcement community? I know that perhaps on the West Coast, they maybe were they warm? Were they receptive towards your coming out as such in an
Um,
unusual religious
if you
sense
go
or
back
spiritual sense?
when I started in 1977, the police department was basically white males. There were three token female officers, and there was one black male, a one-third generation Japanese Canadian. That's radically changed now. It's now probably about 16 to 18% female, and all kinds of different ethnic groups involved. And it makes a big difference. When I started, there was a lot of misunderstanding. There were a lot of people looking askance at me, wondering who I was and how did I dare to be different. Now, there are all kinds of people who are different, and difference, something they're comfortable with. And I think that's probably happened all over North America with police departments. I think it's a good thing. The ethnic and religious diversity is gradually crept in there, and it's made them a lot more receptive to people in their community who are different, and has allowed them to serve them better. The book, actually, I think what you're referring to, Wiccan Warrior, Full Contact Magic, they're not really self-defense books. They're about the warrior archetype and helping people understand what warrior is. It isn't about using your hands, it's about using your head. It isn't about fighting, it's about being effective. So it's about basically taking charge of your life, finding your power and using it in the world.
Whatever the definition of power is, which is, does that some of your work entail that as well, is helping a person discern what kind of power would be beneficial to them? You know, you would always think in terms of someone needing to be aggressive to assert power, but that it need not necessarily be true. Is that correct?
No, basic Sun Tzu, the best general is the one who wins without fighting, without engaging. It's a
Right.
peaceful tradition. It's not about aggression at all.
I'm sorry, from what order is, where was that from? Is that a Japanese or
Sun
Persian?
Tzu is a 13th century Chinese philosopher,
Hmm.
and we've got a lot of influence within our order from Bushido, from philosophers like Miyamoto Musashi from the 16th century. It's all about doing a fearless inventory of everything you are and learning how to use it. You know, I don't think anybody out there has weaknesses, really. Often if I ask people to define themselves, they'll hand me two lists: one strengths, one weaknesses. I tell them, put that away, start again. I want characteristics, because everything you have is useful. You know, if you're stubborn, that could be a problem in some situations, but in other situations, it could be just what you need to get across the finish line. Everything you have is useful. Everything has a use. It's all the context that you use it in that makes it powerful or not.
And this is fascinating. This is one of the reasons why I helped bring Kerr in here, because a lot of us psychics have a tremendous amount of energy and personal power and ego. And it's hard because many of us have not been trained in what power management is. Many of us are very talented, but because of the amount of abuse and discrimination we are faced with, we tend to have to either wield our power in different ways or display ourselves more, or perhaps we go into ourselves and isolate more and we become, you know, more and more introvert. Kerr, I have some questions for you for sure on these
Sure.
issues. One of the things I wanted to start with is you have a rule list, which is quite interesting. For those of you that may want to check out his website, which is kerrcuhulain.com. That's on our site, on our website. You can please check the link there for the spelling. He has 11 tenets or 11 rules. Could you explain to me where you got your rules from? And there's a couple of interesting ones I want to point out for your
Okay, well,
order.
actually, the order has two lists. One is a list of 13 precepts that you use to order your life and take charge of your life. And the other is a list of 13 principles of chivalry, which the two complement each other. So you can have one for each month of the year and then one left over for the year itself. The principal one, the one we start with in our precepts, is know thyself. And of course, that goes right back to the Delphic Oracle. That's basically your toolkit. Turning inwards, doing an inventory of everything you are, that's where your power starts from. My fellow author, Wiccan author, Amber Kay, once wrote in Real Magic, or True Magic, once you've told the world you're powerful, you can no longer be a victim, you know. It's not that some of the people are my fellow knights in the order weren't victims at one time, but they don't see themselves that way anymore because they've taken charge of their life. You can let yourself be blown through life, let the currents all around you drive you along, take you where they will. And that's something that people who are psychic definitely have a strong feeling for, because that's one of the things you're doing is looking out there to see which way these currents are taking you. But this is a matter of saying, you know what, I'm the captain of this ship. I can grab the tiller. I can steer. And so now that you're using that psychic ability to look ahead, to foresee, to determine what's ahead and where you need to go, and you start taking a direction, that's partially what taking control of your power is about.
Okay, so it's actually forming an opinion. And would you agree that that would mean research and self-education? Or can this be for the person that doesn't have access to
Absolutely. It's a matter of, I mean, this is the meditative stuff. It's turning inwards. It's one of the things that a lot of people in ancient Japanese, Chinese martial arts, this is what attracts them to it. It isn't the fact that they want to fight. It's the fact that they want to learn about themselves. They want to discover themselves. They want to get self-confidence. They want to understand how to use what they have. And it isn't just about physical stuff, it's about using the mind. There is an expression in Japanese martial arts, mind like the moon, mind like water. It's a matter of opening up and improving your perception and seeing the world the way it really is, using all six of your senses, you know. It's about, there was a fellow author, Wiccan warrior that I used to hang out with many years ago, Paul Tweedy, and he once said, soldiers march, warriors dance. And that's basically it. When you're engaged with somebody, you're not thinking, you're not being logical. You have completely opened up your mind to awareness, and you are dancing. You're dancing down that knife edge, maintaining your balance.
And for those of you that don't, we have to remember to get people, remind them about what the idea of being a warrior is, because one of the some very good YouTube videos that you have, they really do delineate, he has these weekly or daily updates, they're phenomenal. It does actually outline, in a sense, how you cannot be held captive by your own anger, and what actually makes a knight. Okay, let's say the term of a knight, and let's define that, because there's a couple of things I wanted to go into. One is the definition of an order. You call it the knighthood, and one would imagine that a knight may elect not to go into battle. To me, on a chessboard, it's a strategic adjunctive. It has to be used at some point, but it's usually in order to further a game. What, in terms of, like, you had the structure of a pawn, you have a structure of a knave, would you be able to give us a bit of background, please, about
Sure.
what the order of a knight is, and can they be actually equal to a king? Because possibly they just didn't elect to become one.
I tell people I don't want followers, and I don't. That implies that people are drawing power from me. What I want is brothers and sisters who stand shoulder to shoulder with me, and basically, what this is all about is simply this: master yourself, everything else takes care of itself, seriously. So this is about achieving self-mastery, and we have 3 levels of initiation. Basically, you come in as a novice, you do that inventory, you discover about yourself, you discover how your chi, how your energy, your life energy works, how your psychic abilities manifest themselves, because everyone is different. Once you've got that, you become a squire. Now you start working on now that I know about this stuff, how do I use it? How can I actually take this and use it in the world to order my life and get things done? Once you've mastered that, you become a knight. So basically, you've removed yourself from the world to follow this warrior path. You've got to a point where you're now you've learned how to use this stuff. The last phase, mastery, is turning around and going back into the world and helping other people do this. And that's the last level. The one that I want is the master. So it's leaving the world, learning about yourself, and returning to it. It's a circular journey. It takes you all the way around. But at the essence of it is self-mastery. That's basically what it's about. It's owning taking responsibility. It's not using any of this guilt that you see so many people obsessed with within the modern Western world. But I don't do guilt. I do responsibility. We don't do thou shalt not. We do I will not. It's
right, which brings
quite
me to a
different.
really
It
good
means
point
you have
here.
to take a very close look at what you're doing and own it. There's a thing within the Wiccan religion that I come from called the Wiccan Rede, and it says, "And it harm none, do what thou wilt." And the first part, harm none, I mean, that is pretty obvious. You're trying to take responsibility for your actions, and if something you do affects somebody, you own it, you fix it. But that second half of this double-edged sword is be all you can be, reach for the stars, carpe diem. It's saying you have power, use it. And so the power and the responsibility, go hand in hand.
What would you say for those people who are like big brothers of children or big sisters? and that they're, thrust into a role of being an example or a knight or a responsibility maker. How would you characterize the life of the unwilling, perhaps participant or practitioner? Some of us psychics have definitely probably never elected to become in any way, to
Okay.
embrace our work. Yes, you were saying. You know. I'm sorry.
Yeah, no, I see where you're going with this. And
Yeah.
I've run into this many times. The person who has suddenly discovered they have psychic ability and they're not sure that they never really asked for this. It's just something was thrust upon them. It's a funny thing. Spending all those years as a police officer and surrounded by officers who have to pay very close attention to what's going on around them, and like it or not, that will enhance their psychic ability as well. And you
Good
hear them talk
point. Good
about
point.
hunches and gut
Yeah.
feelings and instincts, but they'd rather, shoot themselves than admit that they have any psychic ability. Everyone has psychic ability.
Wow, most
Let's
of us
start
never
there.
thought about that. Like, I know
There's
that there
this
are some.
experiment that I've been doing
Oh,
with classes all over North America. I've been doing it for years. What I do is I go walk into a group and I say, okay, who here doesn't think they've got any psychic ability? If I had a thought in my head, if I was focusing on an object, you wouldn't be able to tell me what it is. And you'll generally get some people putting their hand up, and I will choose one of them. I will sit them down, and I will say, I've got a bag over here on the table. There's something in it. I'm focusing on that thing that's in that bag, and all I want you to do is close your eyes. Now I've taken away 70% of your perception right there, so I'm forcing you to pay attention to the other 5 senses. And what I will simply do is say, okay, start focusing on all the different things you can hear. Then we'll focus on the things you can smell. Then we'll focus on the things you can feel, the wind in your face, or the feet on the floor, all the different things, all of those other senses. And eventually I will get to that last one. I will say, all right, I don't want you to think. I want you to say the first color that comes in your head. And so they will give me a color. So give me the first shape. Give me the first texture. What does this thing feel like? Nobody has ever failed. You go reach in that bag. It's the color, it's the shape, it's the texture every single time. And it's really quite simple. It's not because I have immense psychic power and I'm putting this into their head so they couldn't possibly not see it. What I'm allowing them to do is to take it apart. It's one thing to look at this other space, this other reality out there. It's another thing to understand it. We're generally, a lot of us, very talented within the psychic community, getting people to connect with alternate realities, alternate mind sets. But we're not necessarily, some of us, very good at helping people understand what they see there. It's kind of like picking up a book for the first time. You see all of these meaningless symbols until someone comes along and says, well, these are letters, and they have sounds, and if we put them together, they form a combined sound. It's a word, it has a meaning, and we collect them and we have sentences. And now, eventually, when we open that book, we can see a world of meaning in front of us. It's the same sort of thing. If you take the thing into pieces, it makes it easier to see, and you can eventually get used to using those pieces, putting them together, get better and better at seeing in one way or another. It could manifest as clairvoyance or clairaudience or however it works for you, but everybody has psychic ability. Everybody. There was a famous experiment that was done in the United Kingdom decades ago where they took children 5 to 8 years of age. Half of them they put in a room with senior cards with the symbols on them they used for testing psychic ability. Other half were in the other room with a pad of paper and a pencil, and they said, draw on the paper what you think the other person in the other room is looking at. 85% got it on the first attempt. But then if you got somebody my age, and I'm 59, and said, okay, let's do this, you'd be lucky to get 49% because people have been telling you for years and years and years, you can't do this. It doesn't happen. It's not true. We all have this ability. So the thing is, I mean, if you've got a natural bent to this, if you have this running over top of you and giving you stuff that you don't understand, that you don't necessarily want to see, this is why you need to develop the power. Because what you need to do is be able to turn down the volume. You need to be able to turn it on when you want to see it and shut it off when you don't. And
I would agree with you. I think that that does take a tremendous amount of self-discipline in other areas of your life. I think a
Mhm,
lot of people approach it and they tend to approach it purely mystically, purely training themselves in spiritual or divination techniques, and they forget about basic practice, like the samurai. Basic practice for the samurai was to stay clean, orderly, wake up at a certain time, dress in a certain way, remain quiet. If you read the Hagakure, I don't know if you've had a chance to read that, but the
mhm.
way of the samurai is very, very particular. And you really do have to follow a tremendous amount of discipline, even to the point of forsaking love. Most people are not prepared to do that. They don't
Mhm.
willingly forsake that. They
I
equate power with love, right?
Yeah, I think basically that is coming from a Confucian, a Zen perspective, and basically for the warrior, what you're trying to do is, if you want to lose something, get angry. You spoke of anger earlier. It clouds your perception. Any kind of emotion is going to cloud your perception. You want to completely shut that down. It's called no mind. You
Hmm.
want to basically focus on what's happening and respond to it. So I don't think that the average person needs to um, shut love out of their life necessarily. But if you're going to be doing psychic work, you certainly need to be able to separate yourself from the emotion. It's especially important when you're trying to do something for somebody that's really wrapped up in their emotions and emotionally distraught. You don't want to necessarily get caught up in that. It'll cloud what you're trying to see.
I think they were just exceptional in that sense, and it was usually a very small, paid, elite army, right? Of course, most larger scale armies would have families and such, and those people would need also some form of training, discipline, or empowerment. And this is where I'm going into some of the questions. A
Mm-hmm.
few of them that I wanted to ask was, if there is a balance between life actions and magic. Let's say you don't want to believe in magic and you just want to be able to harness your power, right? Can would it would make sense that somebody would say perhaps a ritual, even a Christian ritual, would maybe equate to one of a spell, say, or if you're not spiritual at all. Going to the gym and doing a really good workout and at least repeating a word over and over or listening to a good song that you like over and over again would harness that same energy? Or is this very different?
Well, there is a connection that was made back in the 1800s and a lot of ceremonial magic. The idea was, if we're going to do magic, we have to do a ritual. Ritual is a very important, powerful tool. It helps mark important passages in our life. It creates initiatory experiences that can completely transform us. It helps us see the mysteries of ourselves and the world around us. But you don't have to do ritual to do magic. Magic, I can define it in 3 words. Energy follows intent. Let me say that again. Energy follows intent. That's it.
So you could basically make something change by going for a bike ride. As long
Yeah.
as,
If
and what would
if
you define as
if
intent?
you
Most people would think it's wizardry and big,
no
statements and such. What
no
would you
well, I mean,
define?
there. If you go back to ancient Chaldean magic, the idea was it's kind of this Newtonian universe, and you need to use the right word to pull the right lever to get everything to work.
Hmm.
And that's not the way it is from my standpoint. This is more of a quantum thing. There is a unified field connecting everything. Everything is connected to everything else. And all you need to do basically is find the right line of force and just use the slightest amount of intent, energy in that direction, and things start to fall down like dominoes. There's a website the people listening to the show tonight can check out. It's called the Intention Experiment. Go Google that. And the whole purpose of the thing is for people to, on a monthly basis, choose a certain thing that they want to alter and get as many people as possible at the same time to focus on that intent. And they choose things that they can then measure the
I
experiment to
know, I've
see
seen that. Hey, a
what
number,
kind of
a
a
random
result they can
number.
get. Check
Yeah.
that out, because I mean
Yeah.
precisely what I'm talking about. I used to freak out my fellow dispatchers in the beginning, because you go in there and it would be an extremely busy night. Here's the 4 different channels, and it's Friday night, and it's all crazy. And the person you're relieving at the beginning of the night shift is saying, "Are you sure you want to sit down here? It's just completely a gong show." And you say, "Okay, yeah, no problem." You sit down, and there's channel 1, and it's going up in flames, and there's channel 2, and it's just crazy, and there's channel 3, and it's completely out of control. And here's me. I've been sitting there for 45 minutes, and the screen is flat. And they go, "What are you doing? How did you do that?" It's intent. You put that calming intent out there, it will level it out. It'll make it work. You have that power. You can do this. That's magic. I'm not saying special words. I'm not waving a magic wand. I'll tell you about magic wands. If I stopped the average person in the street of North America and said, "What's a magic wand?" He'd say, "Oh, it's a stick. It's got a star on the end of it. You wave it around, bippity boppity boo, swish and flick." If you went to somebody in mainland China who was doing Tai Chi or Zhanjiang or something, and you said, "Show me your magic wand," they'd take the thumb, they'd fold it over their little finger and the next finger, and they'd point with the other 2 fingers. That's a wand to them for directing chi. You don't need anything to do magic other than what you came into the world with, and it's as simple as energy follows intent. If you learn how to sense your energy, you learn how to focus your intent. That's that mental discipline you were talking about, and the sky's the limit. It's amazing what you can do with it.
I know. And then I've seen that. They say that's for the home crowd advantage, and that they were actually able to measure differences in certain numbers that the crowd was able to spike. And they've done this experiment many, many times.
Yeah.
They have been proven through random number generators. You guys can go and do it yourselves. Just Google random number generators. Have fun and watch your ideas transform.
Famous experiment, yes.
So in other words, that can leave us open to, what I've thought are, problems like computer errors. If you want to go into magic, going into computer telemetry and all of such things, I would find it quite interesting to do an experiment on that. But for the purposes of intent, because you're going to get a lot of people now with the internet, with a tremendous amount of frustration, probably locked indoors, unable to, go out, get out, or they're locked into their computer. They're going to be focusing intent, right? So for these people, because I imagine that we're all stuck in this right now. We're stuck on all of our gadgets and devices. What I would love to look at today are the ideas of what people are having problems with right now, which is like, online fighting, online. If you have a situation where, as an empath here, I know when someone's vibing bad vibes to me. My empathic technique is to pretty much sense the child-like essence in them, bring them back to a more diminutive age that I can probably relate to on a friendlier basis, and relate to them as an 8-year-old, and not as a condescending 8-year-old, but just what the inner child is. That's some of the techniques I have. But I wanted to ask you, you must be coming across a lot of people in your order that come in that that still have traces of being, say, gossips, or they have bitterness, or they have one-upmanship, brinkmanship, or, they want to take it on to sort of their own personal ascension level because they were taught that to be strong, you had to be aggressive or defensive, right?
Right.
What do you do with people like that?
First rule of magic, you create your own reality. That's where it starts. If you don't like the reality that's happening around you, don't look at other people or other causes. Look at yourself first, because you're probably causing it. And you have the power to change it. You can make that reality quite different. And it's ridiculously simple to do, really. But that's basically where you have to start. And what you do is not necessarily going to work for everybody, because everybody has their own way of doing things. One of the people that I am very influenced by, and I mentioned this earlier, was Miyamoto Musashi. He wrote a book called The Book of Five Rings. He was a samurai warrior, was never defeated, and he eventually went and became a monk, meditated for 10 years, and then ultimately wrote this book to explain how he had achieved this. Yeah. And his most important precept, and he had 9 precepts that he worked with, was called diligently follow the path of two swords is one. And what he meant by that was samurais had two swords. One was long, one was short. In a given situation, you're faced with an attack. You have to decide which of these two swords you're supposed to use. And people have been telling him for years, you're doing it wrong. You're untraditional. You can't do it that way. And the reason that we're telling him that was because this sword is designed to be held by two hands. All katana are meant to be that way. Well, he figured, I got two hands, I got two swords, I'm going to put one in each. And people said, you can't do that. But he was never defeated because he found a different way of doing it. This is the point of the whole thing. Don't do something because everyone else is doing it. Do it because it works. If it works, keep it. If it doesn't, bin it. It's as simple as that.
Which means when it comes to at least engaging in something, you can be creative. You don't have to follow a group of people, and you probably make it work for yourself. Oh, and we are going to just quickly cut to a commercial, Kerr. We will be right back, and we will finish and definitely or continue with this conversation. It's fascinating. One moment, please.
A new era in psychic services has begun. PsychicAccess.com. You can connect with our psychic advisors by telephone or chat 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. All of our psychic advisors are interviewed, fully verified, and accuracy tested, assuring you quality service. We're living in some very troubled times right now. More and more, the world's problems are affecting us on a personal level. You don't have to deal with this alone. Our highly accurate psychics, caring advisors, and talented mediums can help with situations you are currently experiencing and can let you know what the future may hold for you. All new customers get a free 6-minute reading. All you have to do is register. Why not visit us now and get a free reading at PsychicAccess.com.
Hi, Kerr, we're back. Okay, so, you were saying about being able to come in and adjust one's styles for at least approaching something that's being flexible. When you're looking at a situation where you are being, say, victimized, the word victim would put you into such a passive role. Is a passive seen as weak? For those people that are conscientious objectors or people that simply want to peacefully believe in something, why are they seen as weak?
I don't think that many people understand exactly what real power looks like. And if you want to see an example of an exceptional warrior, look at Gandhi. You couldn't ask for somebody more peaceful than that, but very strong, and he got things done, and very assertive, but not aggressive. Warrior isn't about fighting, it's about being effective. Again, it's not about using your hands, it's about using your head. It's about taking charge and making things happen. And this doesn't necessarily mean that you are overpowering somebody. It means finding ways to link your power with other people and do stuff together.
So how do you mentally prepare or stand down if you're on the defensive? Or when do you decide to make an offensive move when you're in a situation?
Well, that's part of what you're doing when you're looking at a situation. You're trying to nurture the ability to perceive the truth in all matters. That's one of our precepts. You want to try and get a clear picture of what's going, and you want to try to sense what direction the energy is going, and you need to try to redirect it. There's an old adage in martial arts: when they push, you pull; when they pull, you push. You use the energy that's coming at you or being drawn from you. You don't have to use your own force. You can use the stuff that's around you. I have people that often write to me and say, I need to defend myself from psychic attacks. No, you don't. What you need to do is get a sense of how to work with energy, and you need to swim. You need to find the currents and divert the ones you don't want and grab onto the ones you do.
Well, that's what they call leading from behind, I believe. That's what they've stated that term is being able to gather energy around you and let it build on the momentum around you. Specifically when you're under threat, would it be worthwhile even paying attention to a threat, let's say magically? Okay. And was that a way of diffusing it? Or do you have to always concentrate your power and go, I'm under threat, now I better concentrate my ball of power that way? Wouldn't
If
that be like a
somebody's
way of engaging
sending
in it?
something negative at me, I'm just going to divert it and ground it out. Eventually, they're going to realize it's not having any effect, and they're going to throw up their hands and give up on it. If they're trying to pull something from me, well, okay, then I'm going to let you have a tsunami. You can have all the energy you want. You know, you're going to find out that you've taken on too much, and you'll give it up pretty quickly. I mean, it's not a matter of trying to be aggressive. If you are standing there and you are confident, people can tell that. The number of times I avoided conflicts when I was a police officer simply by standing there and making it very evident that I had this power. People just sort of put up their hands and say, okay, I don't even want a piece of this. I'm not going there. People can tell, you know, even everyone has that psychic ability, right? So
in a way, does that make you popular? I mean, I would imagine everybody would think of the Knight, you know, Mr. Popular Guy. But I mean, Mr. Popular Guy has to make some pretty bold decisions, may have to stand away from the crowd.
Leadership isn't necessarily about being the popular guy.
Exactly,
it's about doing the right thing. And you know, it's a matter of realizing that you have strength and realizing that you have, you know, developing your confidence so that you can use it. And again, master yourself, everything takes care of itself. Once you've achieved that, you'll find synchronicity coming into play. Everything starts working. You start moving down the path and everything starts to click. If things aren't, then that's an indication that something is out of balance and you need to reassess and get back into that space, return to that position of strength. So
that is very
it's an ongoing process.
Yeah. That's even just, we teach our clients that it's a matter of going or feeling the flow of energy, the fields around you.
Exactly.
Tell me something. Do you know, is there such a thing as a friendly fight, like sparring? And how would you know the difference in when it crosses over into something a little more negative?
Oh, I mean, if you have people who are listening to us right now who are martial artists, they'll understand there is such a thing. I mean, kumite in Japanese martial arts like Aikido or karate is judo. It's two people entering the ring, bowing to each other in respect, engaging. You know, one's going to go down ultimately, and the one standing is going to win that, and then they're going to get up, they're going to bow to each other, and going to recognize that they have learned something, both of them. You know, if you put on a black belt, basically what you're saying to the world is, hey, I'm ready, test me. It's one of the things that the knights and masters of our order have discovered very quickly is once you have stood up and said, all right, I have mastery, it doesn't mean that you're not going to be tested anymore. It doesn't mean that there aren't conflicts and battles you may need to face in your life.
Yes, good point. So when you become a knight, there's it's forever. I mean, you have to continue to fight.
Oh, yeah, it's a major commitment. But it does mean that you're prepared to face this stuff, and you're prepared to deal with it. You know, every single initiation ritual that we have ever done in the order ends with the words, now go forth into the world and run straight at whatever you fear the most. One of our precepts is who dares wins. That's basically it. You need to be willing to fail. You know, failure isn't a bad thing. Failure is an opportunity to learn and keep moving. Most of the people who are extremely successful in this world got there by failing over and over again. You know,
that's correct. I mean, one of the questions I have about that is, when you have a dare, doesn't that mean that the people will constantly be causing flux or trouble to get more wins? Tell us about the idea of a bad dare or a bad bid.
To dare isn't necessarily challenge another person. To dare is to permit yourself to take that leap into the unknown and try something that you haven't done before, to try and push the envelope out, extend your abilities beyond what you were able to do in the past. It isn't necessarily about knocking heads with somebody else. It's about daring yourself. It's challenging yourself is what it is. You know,
I would imagine that some people would try and
the mountaineer climbing Mount Everest. He's not going after a person. He's going after himself. You know.
So I think for our readers, we need, or our clients here, we really need to know the difference between the idea of fighting, not being fighting other people, but really the inner conflict, the conflict between ourselves and the cosmos, really, which is in the end what you're going to be left to battle with. You know, after everything is said and done, when all the humans are gone, you're left out there in the structural matter of the cosmos, and you're going to have to face the material order at some point, once you have
Yes.
decided to run away or not from the human order. You ran a martial arts training academy. Is that correct? Or you a training academy for? Do
I've
tell us a bit
taught
about that.
martial arts, yes, but I
Okay.
mean, not at the moment, but yes, I have taught them.
Okay, and were you familiar with any of the one of the attack formations that I find most fascinating? It's one of the more powerful ones. It's called the ox. That's in the buffalo, or you know, if that is a traditional Japanese stalemate position, where you get say two sides or four sides that are squared off in a position that are unable to move. How would you psychically diffuse something like this, where you would have a large group of people, perhaps trying to all sides having correct opinions, trying to move something ahead, but all correct opinions outweighing each other, or basically to the point that there is no movement. How does one break that? Does one break that?
Yeah, I think you do. I think you do it by making people understand that they're all looking at the same thing. You put 10 different people in a field, they all witness the same event. One's going to see Jesus, one's going to see Mary, one's going to see Urzuli, one's going to see Gaia, one's going to see a UFO, and at least one of them is going to be looking at everyone else going, what are you all looking at? You know, I mean, we're all looking at the same thing. But because we come from different social, cultural, educational backgrounds, we perceive something different. You get a stalemate situation like that, it's because everyone's locked into one perception. So what you need to do is use that ability of yours, that ability to perceive the truth, to look beyond the obvious, to find ways to make them expand their ability to see themselves and the world around them and start to perceive things in a different light.
Is that a feeling that you imbue in your fellow sparrees or your friends? Because I usually, when I try and deal with groups, I do emanate, or I do exude, I can't help it, a lot of compassion. Even though I may sound strong, I tend to not, hold on to any anger. I express it then and there. I be done with it, and then I move on. I do not hold any grudges. But for those of us that do hold grudges, that are unable to move beyond certain points, what are the points that we can sense there's any breaks, and how do we use those points as
Well,
leverage?
you just right there given me an example of using your energy and your intent. You know, you were doing magic there. You put your compassion out there to help other people become compassionate too. But I mean, again, this is a matter of if they push, you pull, you pull, you push. It's not a matter of finding some sort of force to overwhelm them. It's finding where their force is going and directing it, you know?
So finding a
And
common ground would be a good idea. And there's no special meditation, or for those people out there that are not practicing, that are in this every day, what would be their focus?
well, you know, it's funny, meditation, again, when I was starting down this path 44 years ago, people told me meditation was sitting down, hopefully in a lotus posture and staring at like a candle flame or a mandala or something. And that isn't necessarily so for everybody. There are all kinds of different ways to meditate. And frankly, I find it easier to meditate in motion, doing, Sinawali with my Eskrima sticks or whatever. But the whole idea of meditation is to open your mind to sense all of those currents around you, to connect with them, so that you get a sense of where they're coming from, what direction they're going in, and which ones you need to pay attention to,
I
and
would
which ones
imagine
you
you
need
would have
to
been a
divert.
very good
So,
negotiator. For those of you that don't know a bit about Kerr's background, he was a hostage negotiator in Vancouver when I was living there. Goodness, Kerr, what was going on? And we really
oh,
were
you
on a
get all
group
kinds
level.
of people running around with weapons and they barricade themselves. And the best way to deal with something like that is basically to use the sort of stuff I've just been talking about and get them to put the thing down and start seeing things in a different way and calm down. And, sometimes if they're high on drugs, it takes a while because you have to wait for that influence of the drugs to wear down, but you can get there. It's not a matter of trying to do everything with force. It's a matter of trying to do things by redirecting it.
I mean, you must have bonded then with some of the people that you must have helped. I mean, and that's what we
Oh,
tend
yeah.
to do.
I spent 9 years
Yeah.
in mental health emergency services, me and a psych nurse going around dealing with people who are mentally disordered. It gave you all kinds of interesting perspectives on how people's minds can work.
And also,
But,
you worked in the gang crime unit. Is that correct? That's amazing.
I was in the gang crime unit. I was the emergency response team. I did a lot of crazy, scary things.
Yeah, but you survived, and you were able to master that and come out with a tremendous amount of
Yeah, I made it through a career without ever having to shoot anyone. I'd been shot at,
yeah.
but I was able to,
Wow.
people attacked me on 3 occasions with knives, and I stopped them with my 2 hands.
What did you
That's
do? Did you just
part of the
look them
reason
in the
you do
eye?
this,
Did you
this
look
training or
away?
this discipline.
What did you do?
Control other people's force,
When you're presented in that situation, because here in Toronto, lots of aggressive people everywhere you go.
Mm-hmm.
What do? Do you look away? Do you smile? Do you look them in the eye? Do you generally? I project I do what I call almost like a foot stomp. I sort of just project almost like a thunderbolt into the ground, and that tends to clear the area around me.
Uh-huh.
I find that's a very powerful way to diffuse some of that. People will step back for about at least
definitely
6 8
putting
feet, right?
the sign up saying don't try this, don't test me. But what it comes down to, however this works for the individual, it's a matter of being able to display confidence. Somebody out there who's looking for trouble is generally going to steer naturally away from people who appear confident. If this person that they're looking at looks like they can handle themselves, they're probably not going to try it. They're looking for somebody that looks frightened, that looks like they identify with victim, looks like they don't think they can handle something. That's the kind of person that a predator like that is going after. And if you don't display those sort of things, you're probably going to avoid most of it.
And lastly, you're dealing with a lot of depressive people that want to yield. They want to learn power. They want to do something good, but they don't have the personal self-esteem and power to do that. And they're not necessarily being placed in all these crazy situations. They're out there fighting gangs and such. And they're how do we empower those people to see the little things? I mean, I spent a good 10 years of my life very, very ill, pretty much disabled in the outback. I know exactly what that's like, not having any stimulus and not knowing if there was anything magical to engage in around me. For those people, the unemployed people and the people that can't do anything right now with their lives, the unwilling pacifists, what would you have to say to us?
An awful lot of people use that title victim as a crutch. They use it as a reason why they can't. And what you need to do is discard it. You need to throw it away. You need to find your way. You need to empower yourself. You need to seize your power because you have it. I don't care who you are, what kind of condition you're in, depressed
Exactly.
or whatever, you have it.
What do bored people, how do they harness it? What do video games do? We have so many questions for you. We only have 3 minutes left. Oh my goodness. But would you say one of the things we wanted to quickly cross was in terms of magic not being people sometimes comment that they like having a pet to accentuate their magic. You had a very good analogy about this that you could have described for me. You were telling me about instead of using a cat to amplify your magical power, you tell me us that story that doesn't involve animals or any kind of ritualistic or animal or taking advantage of any other animals. You were telling us about that the other day.
Okay, I'm trying to remember the story here.
Well, there was that, there was the Chinese finger wand, and then you said, so I take a hammer, and that...
Oh, yes, okay, all right.
Yes.
Basically, there's something I do in classes. I walk in, I put a hammer on the table in front of me, and I just stand there and look at it. And don't say anything for a few minutes. And then I say, you know what, it's not doing anything, it's sitting there. But then if I pick this hammer up, I can direct kinetic energy. I can pull nails, I can drive nails. Same thing with a magic wand. It's just a stick.
And you wouldn't need to use
it's a focusing tool, just like any martial artist will tell you. Any stick is a focusing tool, a quarterstaff, a sword. It's also an antenna, and you can use it to receive energy, to determine where the energy is flowing around you. But ultimately, they're tools. and you don't need them. All you need is yourself. You have everything you need right now. Since the day you were born, you've had it. It's simply a matter of learning how to use it.
Kerr, we have 1 or 2 more minutes left, and we have a good point here. So one of our participants in the group here is saying, anger can be beneficial. It can motivate change. It can be a motivator.
Certainly can. Absolutely.
Do tell us when it's appropriate, please, and how it feels to have appropriate anger.
You know what? Anger is a very useful thing. Like your participant said, it can motivate you. It can build up that energy you need to start off and pursue a particular goal. But when you're actually engaging in something, so you run into an obstacle or something, you need to put that emotional stuff aside. You need a mind like water, mind like the moon. It has to be like a still pond, so that if something happens, it's like dropping a stone in the water and you can see all of those ripples coming out. You need to be free of that so that you can operate and so that you can and that's basically what the martial artist tries to do is get away from that, capture that no mind. If you want to lose Kumite, you're going to spar with somebody, get angry, you're going to lose. You're going to end up on the mat, guarantee it, because it will cloud your perception every single time. You need to put that, step away from that, put it aside. You need to get into another reality and simply perceive.
And finally, a sense of humor must produce very good magic, not?
I'm sorry, what was the question?
A sense of humor would also produce good magic, would it not?
If you really understand yourself, you're really comfortable with yourself, you should be able to laugh at yourself, Absolutely.
And that would probably be, I think, the purest way of probably resolving any problems, if possible. I found that worldwide. A smile
very
is
often.
One thing can break tension so quickly.
Indeed.
A fascinating chat with you. Kerr, you are writing some books right now. I was reading about on your website that you have been so busy in your practice. Do tell us what you are bringing up right now in terms of your work, and we are going to be...
The last book that I put out in a metaphysical sense was How to Be Glorious, which is talking about a lot of the things we've been talking about tonight. And it's out there as an ebook and also in print. I also write Sword and Sorcery Fantasy. I'm working on the 3rd book of the Purification Trilogy right now.
Yes.
And I'm hoping that's going to be out in November. And I also write paranormal romance as Carrie Bryce, because nobody thinks that the guy can write romance. And the Darkman trilogy has been completed and it's out there. So if you're interested in that, I encourage people to go out and
and please look at his YouTube videos for people like with minds like
yes,
spans and schedules like mine.
Every month, sometimes several times a month, we put out videos. We have a YouTube channel for the Order of Skaya, and you put some on your site there, I see.
Yes.
And I do daily affirmations on Twitter and Facebook and Google Plus, including some videos that I find elsewhere.
Okay.
So yeah, if people are interested, they're looking for these things to help point them in the right direction and get themselves going, find that power. I encourage them to check this stuff out. It's that's why I put it out there.
No, it's fantastic. And he doesn't, even if you lived in British Columbia, he doesn't charge a lot to be part of his guide, to take part in his guidance. Kerr, thank you so much. Your message is so much what we needed to hear.
It's been a pleasure. It's been an honor and a privilege.
Absolutely fantastic. Please stay in touch, and maybe we'll bring you back onto the show when you have your next book out.
I would love it. It would be great. And for those of you listening out there, go out there and be glorious.
Be glorious and compassionate, and remember your power.
Indeed.
Okay, thank you.
All right, you're very welcome.
Talk to you soon. Bye.
Bye now.
Hello, my name is Res Miranda. If you're having relationship, career, or life issues, I'm inviting you to experience what it's like to have access to professional, highly accurate psychics and spiritual advisors you can trust to care and help you. Register now to get your free 6-minute reading by telephone or chat. Get answers, get access, psychic access, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. psychicaccess.com.
Officers, and there was one black male, a one-third generation Japanese Canadian. That's radically changed now. It's now probably about 16 to 18% female, and all kinds of different ethnic groups involved, and it makes a big difference. When I started, there was a lot of misunderstanding. There were a lot of people looking askance at me, wondering who I was and how did I dare to be different. Now, there are all kinds of people who are different, and difference, something they're comfortable with. And I think that's probably happened all over North America with police departments. I think it's a good thing. The ethnic and religious diversity is gradually crept in there, and it's made them a lot more receptive to people in a community who are different, and has allowed them to serve them better. The book, actually, I think what you're referring to, Wiccan Warrior, Full Contact Magic, they're not really self-defense books. They're about the warrior archetype and helping people understand what warrior is. It isn't about using your hands, it's about using your head. It isn't about fighting, it's about being effective. So it's about basically taking charge of your life, finding your power and using it in the world.
Whatever the definition of power is, which is, does that some of your work entail that as well, is helping a person discern what kind of power would be beneficial to them? You know, you would always think in terms of someone needing to be aggressive to assert power, but that it need not necessarily be true. Is that correct?
No. Basic Sun Tzu, the best general is the one who wins without fighting, without engaging. It's right. A peaceful tradition. It's not about aggression at all.
I'm sorry, from what order is, where was that from? Is that a Japanese or?
Sun Tzu is a 13th century Chinese philosopher. And we've got a lot of influence within our order from Bushido, from philosophers like Miyamoto Musashi from the 16th century. It's all about doing a fearless inventory of everything you are and learning how to use it. You know, I don't think anybody out there has weaknesses, really. Often if I ask people to define themselves, they'll hand me to a list, 1 strengths, 1 weaknesses. I tell them, put that away, start again. I want characteristics, because everything you have is useful. You know, if you're stubborn, that could be a problem in some situations, but in other situations, it could be just what you need to get across the finish line. Everything you have is useful. Everything has a use. It's all the context that you use it in that makes it powerful or not.
This is fascinating. This is one of the reasons why I helped bring Kerr in here, because a lot of us psychics have a tremendous amount of energy and personal power and ego. And it's hard because many of us have not been trained in what power management is. Many of us are very talented, but because of the amount of abuse and discrimination we are faced with, we tend to have to either wield our power in different ways or display ourselves more, or perhaps we go into ourselves and isolate more and we become, you know, more and more introvert. Kerr, I have some questions for you for sure on these issues. One of the things I wanted to start with is you have a rule list, which is quite interesting. For those of you that may want to check out his website, which is Kerr Cuhulain.com. That's on our site, on our website. You can please check the link there for the spelling. He has 11 tenets or 11 rules. Could you explain to me where you got your rules from? And there's a couple of interesting ones I want to point out.
Okay, well, actually, the order has 2 lists. One is a list of 13 precepts that you use to order your life and take charge of your life. And the other is a list of 13 principles of chivalry, which the 2 complement each other. So you can have 1 for each month of the year and then 1 left over for the year itself. The principal one, the one we start with in our precepts, is know thyself. And of course, that goes right back to the Delphic Oracle. That's basically your toolkit. Turning inwards, doing an inventory of everything you are, that's where your power starts from. My fellow author, Wiccan author, Amber Kay once wrote in Real Magic, or True Magic, once you've told the world you're powerful, you can no longer be a victim. It's not that some of the people are my fellow knights in the order weren't victims at one time, but they don't see.
Kerr Cuhulain, he's a retired Canadian Mountie, and he's been able to use his training or his past work experience to restructure and enhance principles, basic principles of ethics and magical intent. So tonight, in this fascinating topic, we're going to be looking at the benefits of polite psychic practice, proper and honorable based fighting form, and self-defense. These tenets are applicable to all areas of life, especially psychics and energy workers, and also for anyone else needing empowering in social or difficult work circumstances. So that's what we're going to be bringing in tonight. We're just waiting for Kerr to connect.
Hello, are you there?
Yes, hi, Kerr. Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you too. Pleased to be here. Thanks for having me.
Fantastic. Oh, well, thank you for coming. So, Kerr, we're really excited about your particular work. Kerr himself, he has written a few bodies of work, actually. He has written a lot. But one of the things that he has done is he's got a very interesting work history. Kerr, tell us a bit about yourself. You're in BC right now.
Right. I'm in Seychelles, BC.
Which
Sunshine
is, for those
Coast.
of you that don't know, it's like the islands north of British
Yeah, I'm on the west coast of Canada, so I'm looking down at the ocean through my window right now.
I know, and he really is, because I used to live there and I know what he means. And tell us a bit about yourself, Kerr.
I'm a retired Vancouver police officer, not a Mountie. I was with the municipal police here. 36 years I was involved both as a police officer and a dispatcher. I was the first officer to go public about his Wiccan beliefs, and then spent the next 25 years doing anti-defamation work and talking to police agencies and public agencies all over North America, educating them about things pagan and psychic. And I'm the head of the Order of Skaya, which is a registered religious society in the province of British Columbia. It's an order of knights. And so we're active trying to show people how to empower themselves and how to stand up and by their example show the world how this could be a better place.
Right, and this is what we found fascinating. One of the reasons I found you as well was because you had an interesting list that you had on the Order of Sky, your website, and one of the things that drew me into your work was the organization and the training or the discipline that you seem to even had in the layout of your books and your web design. Now, you, from what I could see here, you had written a book on the Wiccan self-defense, or at least for law enforcement. How was that received in the law enforcement community? I know that perhaps on the West Coast, they maybe were they warm? Were they receptive towards your coming out as such in an unusual religious sense or spiritual sense?
When I started in 1977, the police department was basically white males. There were 3 token female